My name is Juliana. I'm 31 years old, and for 4 years I lived with a narcissist who promised me love but gave me nothing but pain. This is my narcissist true story, and even though I am free now, every word I speak feels heavy, as if I am pulling memories from a dark place I tried to bury. I believed in his words, I believed in his promises, and I gave my heart completely. But instead of love, I received lies, control, humiliation, and silence that cut deeper than any scream. From the start, his attention was overwhelming. He promised me a future, whispered that I was his soulmate, told me I was the only woman who could ever understand him. I thought I had found something rare, something true, but what I didn't know then was that every promise was a trap, every word carefully designed to bind me tighter. That's what living with a narcissist feels like. A fairy tale at the beginning, followed by a slow descent into confusion, manipulation, and emotional abuse. The first wounds were invisible. He didn't break me with cruelty at once. He started with small distortions that I barely noticed. If I said something, he would twist it. "That's not what you said, Juliana. You're always changing your story." And I would stand there confused, doubting myself. If I smiled too much, he accused me of flirting with others. If I didn't smile enough, he said I was cold and ungrateful. Slowly, I began to feel like there was no right way to exist around him. Criticism was disguised as jokes. If I dressed up, he smirked and said, "Who are you trying to impress? Not me, I hope." If I wore something casual, he sneered, "You really don't care how you look, do you?" No matter what I did, it was wrong. Those subtle comments chipped away at my confidence, until I no longer recognized myself. Narcissist control isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, constant, and relentless. Silence became another weapon. There were nights when he would shut down completely, ignoring me as if I didn't exist. I would beg him to tell me what was wrong, and he would reply, "You know what you did." But I didn't. I spent hours, sometimes days, trying to figure out what mistake I had made. That silence was worse than shouting, worse than anger. It was emptiness, rejection, abandonment, all wrapped in one. I remember one evening vividly. I had spent hours cooking his favorite meal, hoping to make him happy. When he came home, he barely looked at the table. He tasted one bite and said, "Too salty. You never pay attention." Then he pushed the plate away and went to the living room, leaving me sitting alone at the table with tears stinging my eyes. It wasn't about the food. It was about control, about reminding me that nothing I did would ever be enough. In those early days, I thought the problem was me. I thought I was too sensitive, too emotional, too needy. He told me as much. "You make things up in your head, Juliana. You're always imagining problems." That was the start of his gaslighting story, planting seeds of doubt until I began questioning my own perception of reality. And yet, despite the criticisms, the distortions, the silence, I stayed, because every time I began to crumble, he would offer just enough tenderness to pull me back in. He would hold me and whisper, "You're my everything. Don't ever leave me." And I clung to those words like lifelines. That's the cycle of toxic love. Pain followed by crumbs of affection, destruction followed by false promises. I believed his promises of love. I believed that if I was patient, if I gave more, if I endured enough, one day he would stop hurting me and finally become the man he pretended to be at the beginning. But that day never came. Instead, the pain grew sharper, the lies heavier, the silence colder. This is the beginning of my narcissist confession. A story of false love, of emotional abuse hidden behind whispered promises. He promised me love, but what he gave me was pain. The promises that once sounded like poetry turned into weapons. At first, he had sworn to protect me, to cherish me, to never hurt me. But as the months passed, those promises became daggers. He broke them one by one, and then blamed me for his betrayal. That's the twisted heart of a narcissist's true story. They never admit the destruction they cause. They make you believe you are the one who caused it. The gaslighting began slowly, in ways so subtle I barely noticed. If I asked about something that didn't make sense, he looked at me with cold eyes and said, "Juliana, you're remembering it wrong. That never happened." I would stand frozen, trying to replay the conversation in my head. I could hear his words echoing from the day before. but his certainty was so strong that I began to wonder if my memory was failing me. When he came home late, I asked where he had been. He answered calmly, "I told you already. Don't you ever listen? You're always inventing stories." But he hadn't told me. I knew he hadn't. And yet, doubt crept in. Maybe I had forgotten. Maybe I was too emotional, too forgetful, too weak. That's what living with a narcissist does. It steals your confidence not only in him, but in yourself. The lies multiplied, and with each one, he twisted reality further. One night, I smelled perfume on his shirt. My heart dropped as I touched the fabric. When I asked him, his face didn't flinch. He leaned in and said, "That's your perfume, Juliana. You sprayed me before I left. Don't you remember?" I shook my head, whispering that I hadn't. He chuckled cruelly. "See? You really should get help." In that moment, I felt my sanity slipping away. I held the evidence in my hands, and yet he erased it with a single sentence. That's the power of narcissist manipulation. You no longer trust your eyes, your memory, your truth. When I cried, desperate for clarity, he mocked me. "You're crazy, always so dramatic. No wonder no one else could put up with you." When I stayed quiet, he accused me of sulking. "Why do you always give me the silent treatment?" No matter what I did, I was wrong. That endless loop made me doubt whether I was the problem all along. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was too much, too little, too broken. He began rewriting entire events. If we had a fight, the next day he recounted it as if I had been the aggressor. "You screamed at me, Juliana. You pushed me. Don't you remember?" My stomach twisted with fear. I had never pushed him. I barely even raised my voice. But he said it with such conviction that my certainty crumbled. I began to wonder if maybe I had. If maybe I was becoming the abuser. That is the darkest trick of psychological abuse. It makes you question whether you are the villain in your own story. I started keeping notes in secret. Small scribbles in a notebook, recording what he said, what I said, what happened. I thought that if I wrote it down, I could prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. But when he found the notebook, he laughed in my face. "Look at you, obsessed, writing down arguments like a lunatic. You really need professional help." I felt humiliated, exposed, ashamed of even trying to defend my own reality. Every betrayal he committed, he turned back on me. If I found out he was talking to another woman, he said, "It's because you don't give me enough attention." If he didn't come home, he said, "You're suffocating me, Juliana. You make this house unbearable." Each act of betrayal was somehow my fault. He promised me love, but he gave me lies, and then forced me to carry them like sins carved into my skin. Even my body began to break under the strain. I couldn't sleep. I lost weight. My hands trembled constantly. But when I mentioned it, he dismissed me. "You're imagining things again. You're fine. Stop pretending you're sick just to make me feel guilty." That denial of my pain made me doubt even my body. And yet, after every storm of gaslighting and cruelty, he returned with sweetness. He would hold me tight, whispering, "I don't mean to hurt you. You just make me so crazy because I love you so much." And I believed him. I believed that his cruelty was love, that his betrayal was passion, that his manipulation was proof of how much he cared. That's how toxic love traps you. It makes you crave the very poison that's destroying you. Gaslighting became my daily reality. He promised me love, but what he gave me was pain dressed as devotion, betrayal disguised as my fault, silence masked as patience. And I stayed, because I no longer trusted myself to know the difference. This is my narcissist confession. I was broken not just by what he did, but by what he made me believe about myself. And that is a wound that doesn't heal quickly. The escalation came like a slow storm. At first, it was silent lightning in the distance, small criticisms, twisted words, subtle lies. But soon the storm was overhead, roaring, flooding, tearing down everything inside me. By then, I wasn't only living with a narcissist. I was surviving a war that no one else could see. The betrayals stopped being subtle. They became open wounds he inflicted without remorse. I remember the first time he didn't even try to hide his infidelity. He came home late, reeking of alcohol and perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked, his eyes gleamed with cruelty. "Yes, Juliana, I was with her. And do you know why? Because she makes me feel alive. You don't." Those words shattered me, But what destroyed me more was what I said in response. I'm sorry. Sorry for not being enough. Sorry for not keeping him satisfied. Sorry for his betrayal. That's the twisted loop of narcissist abuse. You apologize for being destroyed. Public humiliation became his favorite tool. At a gathering with friends, I tried to tell a story. He cut me off with a smirk. Don't listen to her. She exaggerates everything. She loves being the center of attention. Laughter rippled through the room, and I felt my cheeks burn. I smiled weakly to hide the shame. Later, when I told him it hurt, he shrugged. Then don't act ridiculous. My pain was always my fault. Even special days turned into weapons. On my birthday, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "You don't deserve to celebrate. You've done nothing worth celebrating." That day, instead of cake, I swallowed humiliation as if it were food. Instead of joy, I carried his cruelty like a gift I never asked for. The isolation became unbearable. He didn't just discourage me from seeing friends. He made sure I couldn't. If I tried to visit my parents, he accused me of choosing them over him. They don't understand us, Juliana. They're poisoning you against me. Fights erupted until I gave up. Soon the invitations stopped. Friends stopped calling. My family grew distant. I was completely alone, locked in a world where his voice was the only one that mattered. That's narcissist isolation, cutting you off from anyone who might remind you of who you used to be. His insults sharpened with time. You're pathetic. You're worthless. No one else would ever want you. These phrases became part of my daily life. He didn't need to yell them. He said them calmly, casually, like facts I was expected to accept. And I did. I absorbed them until I repeated them to myself in the mirror. That's how psychological abuse works. Eventually, you become your own abuser. The betrayals grew more frequent. Once, I found pictures on his phone. Another woman. Smiling, happy, everything I wasn't. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He stared coldly and said, "Maybe if you were more exciting, I wouldn't need her." My stomach dropped. My chest ached. And yet once again, I apologized. My shame was so deep that I carried his infidelity like my own crime. The escalation wasn't only betrayal, it was erasure. Piece by piece, I disappeared. I stopped dressing the way I liked because he mocked me. I stopped wearing makeup because he said I looked desperate. I stopped laughing loudly because he told me my laugh was annoying. The more I changed, the more he criticized, until nothing was left of me but silence and shame. Even in public, he controlled me. At a party, I wore a red dress I loved. For a brief moment, I felt alive. But as soon as he saw me, he leaned close and whispered, "You look cheap. Everyone can see how desperate you are." The words crushed me, but I still smiled at others, pretending nothing was wrong. Pretending was the only way to survive. I became so small that even my body started to vanish. I lost weight, skipped meals, stopped sleeping. My eyes looked hollow, my skin pale. But when I mentioned it, he sneered, "That's because you obsess over nothing. You're pathetic, Juliana." My suffering became another reason for him to humiliate me. The escalation wasn't just about what he did. It was about how I reacted. Or rather, how I stopped reacting. At first I fought. Then I pleaded. Finally I went quiet. That silence was my surrender. I accepted humiliation as normal, betrayal as inevitable, pain as love. That's what toxic love does. It convinces you that endurance is devotion. Looking back, I see how complete his control was. He didn't just cheat on me. He made me believe his cheating was my fault. He didn't just isolate me. He made me believe isolation was protection. He didn't just humiliate me. He made me believe I deserved it. That is the terrifying escalation of narcissist abuse. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already too broken to fight back. He promised me love, but as the years passed, all he gave me was pain, and the cruelest part was that I accepted it, believing it was all I was worth. People often ask, "Why didn't you just leave?" They look at women like me and think the choice is simple, but they don't see the invisible prison, the one with no bars, no guards, just chains wrapped around your mind and heart. I didn't stay with him for 4 years because I loved the pain. I stayed because I believed I couldn't live without him. Fear was my first prison wall. He told me countless times, "No one else will ever want you. You should be grateful I even put up with you." I believed it. I believed his voice more than I believed my own. Every time I imagined leaving, panic filled me. I saw myself alone, abandoned, unwanted. The fear of emptiness felt heavier than the pain I was already living in. That's what narcissist control does. It convinces you that survival without them is impossible. Shame built the second wall. To the outside world, he looked charming, charismatic, respected. People admired him. If I told anyone what he was doing to me, I thought they wouldn't believe me. Or worse, they would pity me. I didn't want to be the woman who stayed with a man who humiliated her, who cheated and still blamed her. So I smiled in public, laughed when I had to, and carried my pain in silence. Silence is the strongest brick in the invisible prison. Isolation completed the trap. By the third year, I had no one left to call. My friends had stopped inviting me out because I always canceled. My family grew distant because every visit ended in fights with him. He had carefully cut every string that connected me to the outside world. When I thought about leaving, I realized I had nowhere to go, no one to run to. I was completely alone. That's how narcissist isolation works. It doesn't just separate you from people. It makes you believe they no longer exist for you. And then there was hope, the cruelest chain of all. Because every time he broke me, he also promised me love again. After humiliating me, he would hold me close and whisper, "I didn't mean it. You drive me crazy because I love you so much." After disappearing all night, he would return with flowers saying, "Don't give up on us, Juliana. You're the only one who truly understands me." I clung to those crumbs like they were enough to feed my starving heart. I convinced myself the man I fell in love with was still there, hiding beneath the cruelty, that maybe if I proved my devotion, he would come back. I also stayed because he convinced me it was all my fault. He cheated, but he said, "Men don't cheat if they're happy." Think about that. I thought about it every single day. I thought of ways to be more attractive, more interesting, more patient. I twisted myself into knots trying to be everything he wanted, not realizing he would always find a reason to betray me again. The problem was never me, but he made me believe it was. Finances tied another chain around me. He controlled the money, always reminding me that I couldn't survive without him. Without me, you'd be nothing. You can't even take care of yourself. I had supported myself before I met him, but over the years I forgot. He drained my confidence until I believed I was dependent on him for everything. There were moments I tried to leave. Once I packed a small bag, trembling, heart pounding in my chest. But when he saw me, he didn't panic. He smirked. "Go ahead, but you'll crawl back, Juliana. And when you do, I'll make you regret it." His certainty was terrifying. I dropped the bag. I stayed. Not because I wanted to, but because I was convinced that maybe he was right. Nights were the hardest. Lying in bed beside him, tears soaking into the pillow, I imagined freedom. I imagined walking away, starting over. But then his arm would reach out in the dark, pulling me close. "Don't ever leave me," he whispered. And just like that, my fantasy crumbled. I told myself he needed me. I told myself love was endurance. I told myself suffering was proof of loyalty. The invisible prison wasn't just built by him. I helped build it too, brick by brick, with my silence, my fear, my hope. That's the cruelty of narcissist abuse. You become a prisoner and a jailer at the same time. I stayed because I thought leaving meant failure. I stayed because I thought love meant suffering. I stayed because I was too broken to believe I deserved better. For 4 years, that was my reality. And even now, when I look back, I can still feel the chains around me. Chains made not of iron, but of lies, shame, fear, and hope. He promised me love, but all he ever gave me was pain. That sentence still tastes bitter on my tongue, because I lived it for 4 years, and the echoes of his cruelty still follow me. This is my narcissist true story, my narcissist confession, and speaking it feels like ripping open scars that never fully healed. When I look back, I see 2 versions of myself, the woman I was before him, and the woman I became with him. Before him, I had laughter, I had dreams, I had light in my eyes. With him, I was reduced to silence, humiliation, betrayal, and endless fear. That's what living with a narcissist does. It erases the parts of you that make you human and replaces them with doubt, shame, and submission. He didn't just lie to me. He didn't just cheat. He didn't just humiliate me in front of others. He destroyed the way I saw myself. He convinced me that I was unworthy, that I was the problem, that his betrayal was my fault. That is the most brutal form of psychological abuse. When the abuser crawls inside your mind and makes you punish yourself long after the fight is over. Even now, I sometimes catch myself repeating his words in my head. You're nothing without me. No one else will ever want you. Men don't cheat if they're happy. These phrases became chains, carved so deep into me that even after I left, they remain. That is the lingering trauma of narcissist abuse. The invisible prison doesn't vanish when the relationship ends. The bars follow you. The shadows whisper. The self-doubt lingers. I remember the exact moment I realized I couldn't keep surviving like that. It wasn't one of the big betrayals. It wasn't the perfume on his shirt, or the hotel receipt, or the cruel words at my birthday. It was smaller. He came home one evening, glanced at me, and didn't say a word. No insult, no fight, just indifference. He passed me like I was invisible. And in that silence, I felt my soul break, because I realized I had become nothing. Even to myself, I wasn't living anymore. I was just existing, waiting for his next word, his next betrayal, his next crumb of affection. That night, I felt the emptiness of my life so deeply that it terrified me. Leaving wasn't a victory. It wasn't a triumphant moment of strength. It was exhaustion. I left because I couldn't endure another day of being erased. I walked out carrying only fragments of who I used to be. And even as I closed the door, his voice followed me. You'll come crawling back. You can't survive without me. Some days, I still wonder if he was right. That's the cruel truth. The manipulation doesn't end when the relationship ends. It lingers in the quiet moments, in the reflection in the mirror, in the fear of trusting again. I wonder if I am broken beyond repair, if I will ever laugh freely again, if I will ever believe in love without hearing his voice in the background. But beneath the shame, beneath the fear, beneath the scars, there is a whisper inside me, a fragile voice that says, this wasn't love, this was never love. That voice is faint, but it's mine, and holding on to it feels like holding on to the last piece of myself that he couldn't destroy. He promised me love, but he gave me pain. He promised me a future, but he gave me trauma. He promised me forever, but what I carry is fear and shame. And yet, somewhere deep inside, I know his promises were lies, and my pain does not define me forever. I don't have a happy ending to share. I don't have a miracle recovery. What I have is pain, scars, and a fragile hope that one day I will feel whole again. That one day I will look in the mirror and not hear his voice, only mine. For now, this is my truth. He promised me love, but he gave me pain, and I survived it. Even if I am broken, even if I am scarred, I survived. And maybe survival itself is the first step toward freedom.